And if you look at the transition, right? So looking from cloud to edge computing, how do you envision this altering the broader technological landscape?
That's a really interesting point. We've been talking for over 10 years or so about the number of nodes that are going to exist out for IoT. And we're getting there actually. And during the COVID period, there were many, many more devices connecting at home, in the office, infrastructure around us. What that's meant is that the infrastructure has had to deal with much higher data rates, and data centers can't deal with that. So the only way we're going to be able to do this is to have super powerful data centers that do the number crunching, the computing, but then ship that data back to local environments. And it's on much better processors on the local nodes, on the devices, on those end nodes. Their performance is much higher now. They're able to deal with a lot more of the information. The machine learning is shipped back to them. They do their own AI calculations as well. And you don't have as much of a problem with the latency going backwards and forwards to the data center. You can do much more locally. And then the final key to this is to make sure that you're dealing with the security aspect. So the secure edge computing is where it's going to be really critical, and how to protect all the data that's generated either at the edge or in the cloud, and working together. So it is going to create a shift. There's going to be more and more systems working locally, because that's really where the work's done, and it's more important. Automotive industry in particular can't afford to be shipping information back to a data center. It needs to be local, it needs to be super fast, and you need to recognize the situation and deal with it. Much the same in retail environments, etc.
Yeah. Right, so if we talk about this shift, right, the shift towards edge computing, and then notably as well on the strain, which you touched upon on data centers, companies obviously need to adapt, right? Also in terms of their infrastructure strategies. So ultimately they need to optimize performance and efficiency. How do you think they're going to do that?
The biggest shift is going to be to separate the two spheres, to the data center piece and then the edge compute space. And then as you bring in more and more powerful accelerators, which is where Axelera comes in, the high-end compute platforms alongside AI accelerators in systems will enable devices at the edge to have much more computing power and to be able to manage much more complex computations and deal with use cases that really were not possible some years ago. What that means then is that companies are going to need to work together to produce a system. They're going to need to work together to run the AI models. They're going to need to think about how to build that infrastructure as one, so that it all interacts together. And that's one of the bigger challenges today. Companies tend to run their own infrastructure and their own solutions. And gradually that's starting to shift as people see they need to cooperate a lot more. And I think companies that are startups recognize that, and more companies, the bigger ones, are starting to recognize it and make that shift as well.
So you say it's a shift becoming towards more to the ecosystem, right? Towards working together and then building everything together.
Yeah, if you think about things around the home, and when you're trying to plug in a device because it's allegedly plug and play, and you can't, and there are things happening now. There's a number of consumer companies have got together with chip companies and created something called Matter. So that means that those companies have that software, and the pluggability is much higher. You can plug and play and run those. And those companies are offering solutions for competitors. Now, the only way that is, it's an ecosystem created for the benefit of consumers. If we look at bigger infrastructure for things around edge computing, secure edge computing, and AI, then those companies have to work together. They have to use models that interact better together. And you're going to have to run off several different types of systems. RISC-V, you're going to have to think about ARM. Axelera is focused on RISC-V, and then there's an ecosystem building around that. But in the end, the AI software needs to be neutral, and it needs to be able to operate in both spheres.